So I have finished my V-wrap on the Rigid Heddle loom, and I wanted to do a quick post post project review and see how it compares to the first one I did, which was just kind of improvised the whole way. Okay, so unfortunately, this wrap is so big I can't show it to you easily. What I can do is show you the V. Let's zoom in a little bit more here. So this I did end up after I bound off all four edges of the V and the two raw edges of the longer panels. I did stack the V on top of the binding on the V on top of the binding on the two longer panels, and just seamed everything together. Let's see how close we can get to this. So yeah, again, I just invisible stitched. So this is the binding as sewn to the square, and now the outer edge of the binding sewn around the square is now attached to the panel. And here, this little blooper makes it even more obvious. So my mitered corner didn't quite match up, but it's close enough. So and trying to give you a clearer sense, this thing is so big I can't possibly fit it on my kitchen counter end here fully extended without an overhead drone to camera drone to show you what it would look like. But so here it is in all its glory, and I'm going to say a B plus on this one. It is not as soft and drapey as the original, and the drape is a function of the yarns I used and the set I chose. You may recall that a lot of these are sock yarns, and I set it at a pretty wide set because I was also, a lot of these are sock yarns, and then there's some hand spun. So due to that variability, I chose a wider set, and I might have done better with a narrower, a closer set, but it is still very comfy, very snuggly. I do still like the color choices that I made and the arrangement that I made. So this part's hand spun in the warp. This part is sock yarn, and this is silk wool hand spun. This is wool sock yarn. This is cotton, and then I go back to more um, sock yarn, commercial sock yarn, and then some hand spun. So I like these colors together. I like the arrangement they make. I do like how the V shows up, uh, but because I was easing in a wider panel to a narrower one, they don't perfectly match up. And I, I, while I like the fact that the binding covers up all my raw edges, it does interrupt the stripe pattern. There was no other way to do this, I think, except maybe to use a darker color, but of binding fabric. But it does interrupt the stripe pattern. So that is another issue. Also, the longer I keep staring at the V, the more I notice that there's a float I still need to correct, and now I can't see it because I'm looking for it, but I'll see it in a second, and then I'll go, oh, there it is. There's the float. So yeah, this was an experiment. It was a good experiment. I'm glad I made this experiment, and now I know what to try differently on the next go round for this. There it is. See, I knew I would find it. I knew I would say, there it is. Okay, so I am going to fix this float, even though this fabric has already been finished, wet finished, because this is really obvious to me. And it's going to be an easy fix. I will just grab some of the yarn that I used in this section and run it over the float just to lock it in place. Okay, so just for reference, I grabbed the first one I made to show you how it compares, and I did not do a square shape. I just stitched the two panels together. I finished off the raw edge here, and hand sewed everything together. And I just don't love having a raw edge. I will never love having a raw edge. This is why when I sew clothing for myself, I line everything, and I mean everything, except shirts, because that would just be weird. So how does this first version compare to the second version in terms of size? And the first thing I want to check is the width, because when I put this one on, this square takes up all of my back. Like, it completely covers my back. And that is because this one turned out to be about 1.5 inches wider than the first one. So that might have been a miscalculation. I might have done better tightening the set, and that would have automatically given me a narrower weaving width. But what this is showing me is that there is a sort of upper limit on how wide a V-wrap should be. So that is one factor. Another is that though I did not intend for this to happen, my calculations all went, okay, these two long panels will be the same length. They ended up not being the same length because I didn't want to lose all that warp that I'd so carefully orchestrated in my rigid heddle loom. So we've got a good, I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 inches long difference in the lengths of the two panels, which is fine. It just gives more yardage to wrap over the front of the body in a knot. So that was also different. So basically, this one's just bigger. But it's turned out reasonably well. I chose not to twist the fringe for the two ends because I do so love, and I love this one. I wear the one I'm keeping, my first one, the one I've kept. I do so love the textures and colors staying where they are, and this is where you really get to see the difference in texture in the different yarns and the difference in color. So this all has turned out reasonably well. I hope that my friend is happy with it. I hope that her friend, the ultimate recipient, is happy with it. And I learned some valuable things. So maybe the trick to doing this is not to do a square, but to construct the two panels the way I did on the first one. But this could be a place where I could apply some sort of binding that would look better than what I ultimately did, which was a zigzagged edge and then a crocheted edge, and then my finished product has a wrong side. But it's pretty good. So this is how we learn. And what I learned is mixing yarns like this is absolutely fine. There's all kinds of fibers. There's different yarn weights, and it all work together. As long as the colors work, you're in pretty good shape. What I also learned, and this is a super valuable lesson, is yes, it is completely possible to dive into my stash and use nothing but stash yarns. I did not buy a single thing to make this wrap. And considering what some of my recent projects have been like, where I buy a color and it's not the right color, so I have to order another color, this feels great. So I hope you've enjoyed watching me work through the process on this V-wrap from basic colors, just skeins of yarn or cakes of yarn pulled out of my stash, all the way through the calculation process to getting it on the loom to taking it off the loom and transforming it into a wearable.